Story 1. The Crossroads of Mercy Hill. Sarah Chen had been driving through Pennsylvania's backroads for 3 years, documenting forgotten small towns for her historical preservation blog. She'd seen countless dying main streets, abandoned factories, and churches with congregations of 12. But she'd never seen a town quite like Mercy Hill until that October afternoon when her GPS led her off Route 6 into the Endless Mountains region. The road into town was unremarkable. Cracked asphalt bordered by dense hardwood forest showing early autumn colors. A faded green sign announced Mercy Hill Pop 287 Eastern 1843. Sarah slowed her Subaru, already composing the blog post in her mind. These places fascinated her. Communities that time had bypassed, where generations lived and died within a 5-mile radius, where everyone knew everyone's secrets. Main Street appeared suddenly as the forest opened. 2 blocks of brick buildings, most with intact storefronts, though half were empty. A post office, a church with a white steeple, a general store with a Coca-Cola sign that hadn't been updated since the 1960s. Sarah parked in front of the store, noting the complete absence of other vehicles. It was 2:47 p.m. on a Wednesday. Surely someone should be around. The store's interior smelled of old wood and something vaguely medicinal. A bell above the door announced her entrance. Behind the counter sat an elderly man with watery blue eyes, watching her with an expression she couldn't quite read. Not hostile, but not welcoming either. Expectant, perhaps. "Afternoon," Sarah said, offering her friendliest smile. "Beautiful town you have here. I'm documenting historic Pennsylvania communities. Would you mind if I took some photographs?" The man's face underwent a subtle transformation. Relief? His shoulders, which Sarah only now realized had been tense, relaxed. "Course not. Take all the pictures you want. You just passing through, then?" "Just passing through," Sarah confirmed, finding the phrasing odd. "I'll be gone before dinner." "Good, that's good." He stood, moving to straighten items on a shelf that didn't need straightening. "Stay on Main Street for your pictures. The residential areas ain't much to see." Sarah spent the next hour photographing the town's architectural details. Ornate cornices, original hardware on doors, hand-painted signs advertising businesses long defunct. She noticed things that didn't quite fit. Every building's address was visible, numbers painted fresh and bright despite obvious neglect elsewhere. At the intersection of Main and what a street sign identified as Redemption Way, she found a compass rose inlaid in the pavement, brass gone green with age. North, south, east, west marked clearly, but between them in smaller letters other words. Mercy, judgment, salvation, damnation. The artistic choice struck her as grimly appropriate for a town named Mercy Hill. Pennsylvania's religious history ran deep, especially in these isolated communities where fire and brimstone never quite went out of fashion. She photographed the compass, adjusting her angle to catch the late afternoon light. That's when she noticed the shadow. Her own shadow stretched east, as it should with the sun westering. But another shadow cast by nothing she could see extended north from the compass's center. A human-shaped shadow, tall and thin, absolutely motionless. Sarah stepped back, her skin prickling. When she looked around, Main Street remained empty. No person, no post, no object that could cast such a shadow. She photographed it anyway, hands slightly unsteady. Through her camera's viewfinder, the shadow looked darker than it should, almost liquid black against the pavement. When she lowered the camera, it was gone. Sarah's rational mind offered explanations. A trick of light, a stain on the pavement, her eyes adjusting from looking through the viewfinder. But her instincts, honed by 3 years of exploring isolated places, said something else entirely. Time to leave. She walked back toward her car, passing the church. Its doors stood open, revealing dark interior. From inside came singing, Not the robust hymns she'd expect, but something thin and reedy, voices that sounded wrong. Too high-pitched, words in no language she recognized. The melody made her teeth ache. Her Subaru sat where she'd left it, but something was different. Sarah stopped, keys in hand, trying to identify what had changed. The car looked right. The street looked right. But the light had shifted in a way that didn't match the sun's position. Shadows fell at odd angles, some stretching impossibly long, others barely visible, though their objects were substantial. The door of the general store opened. The old man emerged, followed by others. 5, 10, 15 people filing out, all watching her. Not moving toward her, just watching. Their faces wore that same expectant expression. "Excuse me," Sarah called, keeping her voice steady. "Is something wrong?" A woman in a faded floral dress spoke. "You said you were just passing through." "I am. I'm leaving now." "Before dark," the woman continued as if Sarah hadn't spoken. "You said before dinner. It's important." Sarah checked her phone. 4:23 p.m. Sunset wasn't until after 6. "I have plenty of time." The crowd's collective expression changed to something like pity. The old man from the store shook his head slowly. "You don't understand. It's not about sun time. It's about town time. When the shadow reaches the north point, that's dark. That's when the crossroads claims its due." "I don't understand," Sarah said, though dread was coiling in her stomach. A younger man, barely out of his teens, pointed toward the intersection. "The compass. Every day it marks time different. Started back in 1843 when the town's founder made his bargain. He wanted prosperity, wanted Mercy Hill to thrive. Got his wish for exactly 1 year. Then the price came due. 1 life taken at the crossroads every day at dark. Town time dark, not sun time. Could be 3 p.m., could be midnight. We never know until the shadow appears." Sarah's eyes went to the compass rose. The shadow had returned, the one cast by nothing. And it was slowly rotating toward the north point. Toward mercy. Or perhaps toward judgment. "You have to go now," the woman in the floral dress said urgently. "We thought you understood. When you said just passing through before dinner, we thought you knew. You're not one of us, so you're at risk. We're bound here. The crossroads can't claim us because we're already claimed, but visitors—" Sarah ran. Rational thought shut down, replaced by pure survival instinct. Her car was 15 feet away. She hit the unlock button, yanked the door open, threw herself inside. The engine started immediately. Thank God, thank God. She jammed it into reverse, not bothering with her seatbelt. The shadow on the compass had nearly reached north. Sarah's tires screamed as she reversed into a J-turn, pointing the car toward the road out of town. The crowd watched, unmoving. In her rearview mirror, she saw the shadow kiss the north point of the compass, and for an instant, something stood in the intersection. Tall, impossibly thin, its outline wavering like heat shimmer. Where its face should have been, there was only darkness deeper than shadow. She floored the accelerator. The Subaru's engine roared as she rocketed down Main Street toward the forest road. Behind her, the thing at the crossroads began to follow, moving in a way that defied physics, not walking, not floating, but somehow traversing distance without crossing the space between. The town limit sign flashed past. The moment her car crossed that invisible boundary, the pressure in her chest released. Sarah gasped, realizing she'd been holding her breath. In the mirror, Mercy Hill receded. The thing at the crossroads stood at the town's edge, watching her go, waiting for the next visitor who wouldn't understand about town time, about the bargain made in 1843, about shadows that claimed what they were owed. Sarah drove for 2 hours before stopping, putting multiple counties between herself and Mercy Hill. When she finally checked her camera, every photo she'd taken in the town was corrupted, except one. The compass rose with its shadow crystal clear, time stamped 4:23 p.m., and in the center of the compass, barely visible, numbers 287, the population of Mercy Hill. One for each day of the year minus 78, the people bound there feeding one visitor per day to whatever waited at the crossroads. Sarah did the math with shaking hands. 78 days until the count reset for a new year. She never posted about Mercy Hill, never went back. But sometimes at 4:23 p.m., regardless of where she is, Sarah's skin prickles and her teeth ache. She checks her shadow then, making sure it falls in the right direction, cast by the sun and nothing else, making sure she isn't somehow still standing at a crossroads where town time runs different, where something tall and thin decides when darkness falls and debts come due. Story 2. The broadcast from station WVHF. Marcus Webb had been an electrical engineer for 17 years before he semi-retired to the Pennsylvania countryside in 2019. He'd kept his hand in the field by maintaining and restoring antique radios, a hobby that had evolved into a modest business. His workshop in a converted barn outside Slatersburg housed dozens of receivers, cathedral radios from the 1930s, transistor sets from the 1960s, everything from Philcos to Zeniths. Most were customer repairs, but some belonged to his personal collection, devices he couldn't bear to part with. The Hallicrafters S38E receiver had arrived on a Tuesday in March, shipped from an estate sale in Potter County. The seller's description had been minimal. Works, some static, sold as is. At $75, it was a steal. The S38E was a classic 1946 model, a 4-tube shortwave receiver that had brought news of the post-war world into thousands of American homes. Marcus unpacked it carefully, admiring the black crackle finish and the slide rule dial. Cosmetically, it was pristine. He carried it to his main workbench, cleared space among the clutter of vacuum tubes and test equipment, and plugged it in. The power switch clicked solidly. Tubes began to warm, their orange glow visible through the ventilation slots. Marcus let it warm up for 5 minutes. Old tubes needed time. Then slowly rotated the tuning dial, sweeping through the AM band. Static mostly. Fragments of talk radio, a weather report, Spanish-language music from a distant station. Normal shortwave fare for rural Pennsylvania. He moved up into the higher frequencies, into the spectrum where international broadcasters, ham operators, and pirates made their transmissions. More static, a time signal. Someone reading numbers in monotone, a number station probably, those mysterious Cold War holdovers. Then at 79940 MHz, he found something else entirely. A voice, male, speaking with the measured cadence of a 1940s radio announcer. Complete information on local defense preparations. This is WVHF, broadcasting on 7940 kilocycles from the Civil Defense Headquarters in Harrison Falls, Pennsylvania. The time is now 8:32 p.m. Eastern Wartime. We continue with tonight's programming. Marcus sat back, puzzled. Eastern Wartime hadn't been used since 1945. This had to be a recording, some historical reenactment or nostalgia broadcast. But the signal was strong, clear, with none of the compression artifacts of modern digital transmission. It sounded genuinely live. Music began playing, big band, Glenn Miller style. Marcus recognized Moonlight Serenade. He let it play while he searched online for WVHF. Nothing came up, no historical records of a station with those call letters. Harrison Falls rang a bell, though. He searched for it, specifically adding Pennsylvania. The results made his skin prickle. Harrison Falls had existed briefly in the 1940s, a planned community built around a defense plant that manufactured artillery components. At its peak in 1944, the population had reached 3,000. But something had happened there. Details were scarce, classified for decades. The town had been evacuated in January 1945, and the land had become part of a state forest. No official explanation was ever given. Rumors mentioned a chemical spill, others an unexploded ordnance accident, but nothing confirmed. The music on the radio ended. The announcer returned. That was Glenn Miller and his orchestra with Moonlight Serenade. We have a special bulletin from Civil Defense Coordinator Thomas Brennan. Citizens are reminded that the evening curfew begins at 9 p.m. All residents must be in their designated shelter areas by that time. This is not a drill. I repeat, this is not a drill. The phenomena observed in the northern section of town continue to expand. Quarantine protocols remain in effect. Marcus leaned closer to the radio. This was no simple historical playback. Phenomena? Quarantine? These weren't terms used in standard wartime civil defense broadcasts. He grabbed a notepad and began transcribing. The announcer continued. We've received reports that the boundary has moved south another 2 blocks since this morning. Residents of Oak Street and Maple Avenue must evacuate immediately to the shelter at the high school. Do not attempt to retrieve personal belongings from the affected area. Do not, under any circumstances, respond to anyone calling to you from across the boundary line. The voices are not real. They are manifestations of the phenomena. Responding will only draw it toward you. The hairs on Marcus's arms stood up. This was getting weird, elaborate if it was a hoax. He checked the frequency again. 7.940 MHz exactly. He tried tuning slightly off frequency, but the signal disappeared into static. Only at that precise point did WVHF come through. Another voice joined the broadcast, older, authoritative. This is Thomas Brennan, Civil Defense Coordinator. I'm speaking to you from the high school shelter where approximately 700 citizens have now gathered. I want to be direct with you because rumors help no one. 3 days ago, something happened at the defense plant. I don't fully understand it. The scientists who worked there don't fully understand it. An experiment went wrong. Reality itself has been compromised in a portion of our town. Brennan's voice wavered slightly before steadying. The affected area is expanding at a rate of roughly 1 block per day. Within this zone, the normal laws of physics do not apply consistently. Time moves differently, space folds in on itself. And there are things, entities. They may look like people you know, but they are not. They speak with familiar voices, but they are not your loved ones. My own daughter. Static burst across the frequency. Marcus flinched at the volume. When it cleared, the younger announcer was back. We're experiencing technical difficulties. Please stand by. Marcus sat in his workshop, dusk falling outside, staring at a 75-year-old radio that was receiving a broadcast from a town that had been evacuated in 1945. His rational mind insisted this was impossible. Electromagnetic radiation traveled at the speed of light. Even if this were somehow a genuine signal from 1945, it would have left Earth decades ago. This had to be a recording, a prank, something. But the fear in Thomas Brennan's voice when he'd started to mention his daughter, that had been real. The broadcast resumed. Brennan was speaking again. Evacuation efforts will begin at dawn. Military transport trucks will arrive to move everyone to camps in Harrisburg. You must bring only what you can carry. Harrison Falls is being abandoned. The government's official position will be that the defense plant had a chemical leak. Let them believe it. Let everyone believe it. The truth is too dangerous, too destabilizing. How do you tell the world that we tore a hole in the fabric of reality? That we opened a door to somewhere else, somewhere that wants to come through? A new sound entered the broadcast. Sirens, wailing in the background. Brennan's voice rose. It's breached the high school perimeter. Everyone move to the fallback position in the auditorium. Stay together. Don't let it separate you. More static, then silence. The carrier wave remained. Marcus could see it on his signal strength meter, but no audio. 1 minute, 2 minutes, 5. Finally, the younger announcer returned. He sounded exhausted, broken. This is WVHF. The time is 11:17 p.m. The high school has been compromised. We've lost contact with Coordinator Brennan and approximately 200 citizens. The phenomena has consumed the entire eastern half of town. Those of us remaining are retreating to the train depot. Military evacuation may not arrive in time. If anyone is receiving this broadcast, if anyone can hear me, I need you to understand something. This isn't over. The phenomena didn't stop when they sealed off Harrison Falls. It's still there, contained but not destroyed. It's waiting, and sometimes in the places where the veil wore thin, it reaches out. The announcer took a shaky breath. If you're hearing this, you're in one of those places. The receiver you're using, it came from Harrison Falls, didn't it? From our town? The electromagnetic properties of the phenomena. It saturates objects, turns them into bridges. You're not hearing a recording, you're hearing us live 70-some years ago. Because time means nothing to what we unleashed. It exists in all moments simultaneously. Marcus's hand moved toward the power switch, hesitated. The announcer continued. Turn it off. Destroy the radio. Don't let it remain as a doorway. We're already gone. Everyone here is already dead or worse. But you can still be saved. It's listening through that radio. It knows where you are now. It's felt you listening. And if you let the broadcast run until midnight, until the barrier between when and now is thinnest, it will. Marcus shut off the radio. His heart hammered. Outside, full darkness had fallen. His workshop, previously comfortable and familiar, now felt exposed. The windows were black mirrors reflecting his frightened face. He should smash the radio. That's what the announcer had said. Destroy it. But 17 years as an engineer made destruction difficult. Besides, his rational mind was reasserting control. This was elaborate, but it was still a hoax. Had to be. People didn't tear holes in reality. Time didn't work that way. He left the radio on the bench and went into the house, locking the barn door behind him. His hands were steadier now. Inside, with lights on and a beer from the fridge, the whole experience seemed distant, unreal. He'd research it tomorrow, find the forums where people cooked up these elaborate ARGs, these alternate reality games. Someone had programmed a signal on that frequency, recorded the audio, created a whole mythology. Impressive, really. Marcus fell asleep on the couch around midnight, the TV murmuring. He woke at 3:47 a.m. to the sound of his barn door opening. The creak was distinctive, a sound he heard every morning. But it was the middle of the night and he'd locked that door. Through his window he saw light in the barn. Not the harsh LED of his work lights, but softer, warmer, incandescent like old bulbs. And there was music, big band, Glenn Miller. The Hallicrafters' receiver had been off. He'd switched it off himself, checked twice. Marcus should have called the police, should have stayed in his house. But the part of him that had spent 17 years solving problems, the engineer who needed to understand how things worked, made him stand, made him walk to the barn, made him push open the door. The workshop had changed, not completely but subtly. His modern test equipment was still there, but alongside it sat older devices, oscilloscopes with round green screens, tube testers that hadn't been manufactured since the 1950s. The radio was on, broadcasting music. The dial glowed, but wrongly, the numbers seemed to shift, frequencies that didn't match the positions they should occupy. And standing next to the radio was a man in a 1940s suit, his face in shadow. When he spoke, Marcus recognized the voice. The young announcer from WVHF. "You didn't destroy it," the man said. Not accusatory, just tired. "They never do. Everyone thinks they're smarter than the warning. Everyone thinks they can control it, study it, understand it. That's what the scientists at the defense plant thought. "You're not real," Marcus said, though his voice lacked conviction. "I'm as real as anything else that came through the tear." We're all still there in Harrison Falls in 1945, dying over and over as the phenomena consumes us. But we're also here now, wherever the contaminated objects create bridges. The radio isn't receiving our broadcast, it's bringing us through. The shadows in the barn began to move independently of any light source. Marcus backed toward the door, but it had closed somehow. The man in the suit shook his head sadly. "Midnight on the broadcast. That's when the barrier fails completely. You thought you turned it off at 11:30, but time doesn't work right around the phenomena. For the radio, for us, it's been midnight for hours. You're already in Harrison Falls. You've been here since you turned on the receiver. Your workshop, your house, they're overlaying our town, occupying the same space in different times. And now, the overlay is becoming permanent." Marcus looked down at his hands. They seemed translucent in the strange light, as if he were fading, or as if reality were making room for two versions of the same space. His workshop in 2024 and Harrison Falls in 1945 forced together, merging into something that couldn't exist but did. The last thing Marcus heard before the phenomena took him fully was the broadcast, still running, the announcer reading the news in that measured professional voice. News about a war that had ended 80 years ago. News about a town that had been evacuated and erased from maps. News that would play forever on 7940 MHz, waiting for the next person to tune in and listen, to become another ghost trapped in the space between then and now. In the morning, Marcus's house stood empty. The barn door hung open. Inside,